Hi everybody and welcome back to my modeling channel. So today we're going to build another beast jet. It's a Falcon 50 EX scale 172 from A model. So let's open the box and see what we have inside. So we're going to start this kit by checking the instruction sheet. So it's an A4 format paper. You have the picture of the aircraft, a kit with all the parts included in this kit, and of course then we're going to move on to the kit itself. So you have a lot of paper. It's pretty straightforward. Basically you're going to start with the cockpit and then assembling the fuselage, and then we're going to move on to the wings, engines, and then all the rest with the undercarriage coming up to all the parts and the little antennas. Then we have two decal options, one for a November age Falcon 50 and the other one for an Austrian one. So two different operators, and basically the instruction sheets for the decals is in color as well. So that's one side for the instruction sheet. Now we're going to move on to the decal sheet. So it's pretty straightforward. I haven't used a lot of those decals in the past, but I'm sure they will be very easy to use. So we have the walkway, we have some pitot statics, some lines, and of course the main colors of the aircraft. Now we're going to move to really what's interests us, the kit itself. So it's presented in a Ziploc bag, and I managed to open this, and you have a couple of sprues. So what we have here is basically one of the first sprue is the fuselage. It's in the light gray color. You have fine engravement for the structure and the panel lines. You have the emergency exit on both sides. Those are normally, I think, for the French Navy version. And it's pretty nice, pretty straightforward. Then we're moving on to another sprue where you have basically the mounted engines, and you also have the S-duct for the number 2 engine. You don't have any, I'll think we have the other options and the fan on the other sprue. Then we have the lower part of the wing, and we have a Bose stabilizer. The stab are in one piece, and of course the lower part of the wing. The upper side, still a very fine engravement, and what we have here is also you can see all the details for the spoilers, and you have the tail, part of the tail. So it's in two parts, and basically the second part basically has the rudder in one piece only. Then we're gonna move on to that other part, and that other part consists of some winglets that we have here, or you can do it without the winglets for the Falcon 50. You have some part for the interior as well. It seems to be like it's the cockpit, the pedestal panel, and then most probably there will be another part for the seats. And then we're moving on to the F part, which include basically one landing gear. You have one of these emergency exit, one seat, the fan, and some other little parts that I'll see later on the kit. And of course you have these parts twice, as you have 2 engines and 2 seats for the cockpit, so they just double up those parts. Then we have one of the last sprue. Basically will be with the pitot. You have some part for the nose landing gear as well, and lots of probes about that aircraft. And then we have on the X1 looks to be all the flaps fairing. Now we have some clear part as well. There is 2 sprues. Basically there is the underbelly, or where we will have the landing lights. You also have that white part will be for that emergency door. I think that's for the French Navy version. And we also have the cockpit window with the windscreen. and but the kit does not provide any masking tape, so I will have to do it myself. And the last part, not least, is we have some photo etch parts. So there is 2 sprues, and those looks to be about the. We have some covers and probably some probes, antenna, the APU exhaust, or there is a cover protection for the APU. It could be the static discharger, I think it is, and some gear doors and some others antenna. So it's a nice little kit. So I think it's gonna give us a lot of enjoyment to build. But enough of talking, and let's start building. So we're gonna prepare that kit by preparing our fuselage. And for this, I'll have to say that you have a lot of preparation, because the plastic injection has some little extra parts basically on the joint, and you have to remove that. And through that kit, I have to say that this kit is not a kit for beginner modelers. So that said, so we're gonna prepare all the parts initially, and there will be a lot of preparation, a lot of time to spend, and of course there will be quite a bit of fiddling later on, but you will see that. So I will now assemble the tail of that Falcon 50, or mainly the engine exhaust for the engine number 2. And for this, well, I will use standard Tamiya glue for all the models. Now what we're gonna do, that version comes with the French aeronaval version, which has those emergency exits and those panels basically in clear parts. So I have to remove those and put that with a regular plastic and close this part of the aircraft and the model. So I have to adjust this, and I will glue it to the fuselage, and then of course later on I'll have to sand it down. So a big part of that model as well was preparing the cockpit, as we have a pretty nice view on the cockpit. I mean, I was expecting to have a nice view on that cockpit. That's the clear part, and all the cockpit windows are pretty big. So initially you will prepare that part. We will assemble basically the structure of the cockpit and the nose gear bay, and then what we will do is we will start painting and assemble that cockpit. But let's come back to our assembly first. So first, now I have to add some putty on that windows number 1 on the left and the right side. And while the putty is drying, I will start the rest of the assembly. So I'll have to move on to the tail, which is in 2 parts as a sandwich part, and then we're gonna put it all together. There is also the duct shape that you have to work on engine number 2, and then we're gonna start working as well on the wings. So the wings will also be in 2 parts, I mean 3 parts total. There will be the underside, which is 1 part, and then the top side. And but as you can see later on, there will be some adjustment, as the wings is a little bit too thick. So I had to do some adjustment on that, and basically I use a sharp knife or a cutter, and then basically I had to scratch the trailing edge of the wing to be able to get the proper thickness and the proper shape. Now I'm gonna start working on the cockpit. So what I did is I find some of those cockpit posters on the internet, and then I printed out on the simple paper. Because the view you can have from the cockpit is not as good as you would have with some military fighter jet, but still you can see some nice details. So that was just enough, didn't need to waste some decals, print it out, glue it in the cockpit, and that worked perfectly actually.
I will now start painting the glare shield, and for this I will use a matte color, and of course later on I will assemble it. So what we're gonna do following this is to start painting our seat, the pilot seats, and for this I use a few different colors. For the cockpit itself I had a more like a yellow-brown color, trying to replicate some leather seats as well, and I did the same for the pilot seat, but there are two colors different, but we did the first batch on the center of that seat. Now you have the options of having that Falcon 50 with two tails, the straight tails, or with the SATCOM antenna which is on the top of the fin. So I decided to go for a classic Falcon 50 as it was requested by one of my friends, so he asked me to make the Falcon 50 flew in the past. Now that all our parts are ready, we're gonna start the final assembly of the cockpit, and we're gonna add the instrument panel, then the seats. We will try to see how is the fitting later on on the model itself, and then we will add of course the yoke, and then we're gonna put it inside the model and glue it together. So initially I'll have to put the wheel well, and then I will add the cockpit on top of it, and then we're gonna have to use some modeling paste, as I don't want the aircraft to sit on its tail. And as I'm gonna paint with the open window that I'm gonna fill up later, what I did is I put some paper on the back of the cockpit door instead of the cockpit door, and that will allow us like that this way to avoid having some paint coming into the cockpit. Then we glue the fuselage together. For this, of course, I didn't have any clamps that time, so what I was using some regular tape. And then I saw that I forgot some default, so I forgot the S-duct on engine number 2 and its tail, so I had to finish doing the adjustment, and then I was able to fit everything back on the aft part of the aircraft, glue it all together, and as you can see there was some big gap remaining on the top of that engine number 2, so that will require a lot of filling and sanding, and that's why I said at the beginning of that video that this plane and that model is not for a beginner modeler, as it's going to be quite hard to achieve some nice result. There will be a lot of adjustment later as well with the cockpit window. That's going to be another pretty nice challenge, but you'll see that a little bit later on. After finishing the wings, we're going to start preparing our engine, and there will be a little bit of a preparation for those parts all together. And then what we will do, we'll put the fan disc and then the exhaust, and then we're going to glue basically everything together, and then we'll add the mount, the engine mount on the engine pilot a little bit later on. So after filling all the gaps, it's now time to remove the extra putty and the extra filling, and we're going to use some regular sandpaper, about 600 grit for the initial, and then I will finish all the fuselage itself, and then we're going to move to the wings and the rest of the aircraft. Now that our surface are ready, we're gonna glue the cockpit window together, and so I'll have to prepare, of course, the parts and do a little bit of adjustment and then glue it directly on the cockpit, and that will require a little bit of filling. Then we're gonna add, of course, the tail and let this dry for a little bit, and then there will be quite a bit of a filling, but I'll come back to you when I'll start removing the putty on the extra putty on the cockpit window. Now to remove the extra filling next to the windows, next to the clear part, what I did is I used some adhesive tape on the sensitive area, and then I moved them along to protect basically my clear part and my cockpit windows. So I had to do that in view to protect everything, and that's also one of the little tip. You have to go very gently, as it might be a little bit tricky, and then you'll have to add some more adhesive tape all around the fuselage when you go all around those structure line and the joint basically between the clear part and the dark gray plastic. Now what we will do, we will paint basically the landing lights on the inside part of the clear part, which are located basically at the wing fairing on the underbelly, and then we're gonna glue the wings directly to the fuselage. And this was basically to avoid having a clear part onto a dark area, so that's why I decided to I elected to paint that dark metallic gray. What we're gonna do now, we're gonna prepare some mask with adhesive tape and cut all the edges, all around the edges with some sharp knives or some scalpel knives. So this will be basically a mask, and then we're going to be able to add the putty on all and fill all the gaps basically around the wings and those parts. We're now gonna finish the last part of that build. We're gonna add the horizontal stabilizer, and for this I will use some standard glue, but mainly while the glue is drying I have to set up the proper diagram on that tail. So what I use some adhesive tape to make sure that I have the proper diagram on the aircraft. It's now time to go to the paint booth. So initially I will use silver color or polished aluminium to do the intakes of the jet engines and of course the leading edge as well. And I will let this dry later on, and then I will start adding some gray color, a light gray or a primer basically on those sensitive area where the clear parts. Then we're gonna move on to the blue line of that aircraft. I will replicate the plane that was flown by one of my friends. So I was working on the pictures that I received and I could find on the internet, and then so there is a blue stripe double with a kind of azure or a very light green Florida green stripe around the fuselage. So then I will of course do the mask, and then we have a kind of white, glossy white color all around the aircraft. So I will use that later on, and I will have, as I did before, when the whole model is in white, I have to do that in few parts, as unfortunately I need a stand to rest the aircraft while the paint is curing, and it might take some few days. So for this I have to be careful. I have to wait a couple of days until the paint is really cured, and then I can paint the remaining parts. Otherwise you would see some fingerprint marker drying out on that paint. So we're gonna now move to the last part where we're gonna paint and prepare the undercarriage, and then we'll be able to fit the undercarriage on the aircraft and do the decaling process. We're now working on the last part. We're gonna add all the decals for the structure of the aircraft, and the tail number, basically I did the decal myself. It was quite easy to print out the tail number, and then I was able to finish everything very easily. So this is the end result of that Falcon 50 on scale 1/72 from our model, that Ukrainian brand. I hope you enjoyed that build with me. If you did so, please give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you soon for another build video. Thank you for watching.